Hello, my name is Michael Dorn. I'm an embedded software engineer here at DornerWorks with our Separation Technologies team, and today I'll be introducing our VM Composer tool. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the features of VM Composer by starting a new project. So we're going to click Create New Project, give it a project name. Here I'll call it Test Ultra 96, where we're going to target the Ultra 96. We're going to keep it as a single core exclusive scheduling algorithm. And then here I will go ahead and pick a project directory, which will be my VM Composer workspace on my desktop. So once we create that project, I can now go to the overall project configurations. I want to make sure again that I'm keeping everything as single core exclusive for this example, and everything should remain default at this point. So we'll close out of that. First thing I want to do is add a virtual machine, so I can do that by dragging and dropping from the toolbar on the left. I can go in and click this settings icon, and I'm going to assign it 1 core. I'm going to leave the default amount of RAM as well as the RAM address, and then by leaving these blank, it will also use a pre-built kernel, a Linux kernel or Linux image, as well as keep a default root file system. So we'll go ahead and save and close that for now. I want to add a couple of peripherals, so over here on the left toolbar what I'll do is I'll grab some general I/O. So I'm going to grab USB, and then from the networking I'm also going to grab Wi-Fi. There are other features such as display, DMA engines, storage, as well as serial. When adding these, the back-end tool will go ahead and create entries in the device tree, which will inform this virtual machine that these peripherals do exist. So the next thing I'll go ahead and do is I want some serial output, so I'm going to drag and drop a virtual server. I'm going to change the settings to be a virtio serial. Save and close this. And then I also want my serial device so that I can view any information printed from my virtual machine out on the serial console. Once I have these two things set up, making the virtual connection is as easy as dragging and dropping. So now I've established a connection between these two, the virtual machine and the virtual serial server. I can confirm that I have this virtual connection by clicking the settings and then viewing the direction of my virtual machine to the virtual server. So once that's all complete, I can go ahead and build the project. Typical builds take anywhere from 30 seconds to a few minutes, depending on whether or not this project was previously built. There we go, we have a successful build within 68 seconds. Upon completion, you should be able to see an output log, which will show you configuration and build steps throughout the process. So now that we have a resulting image, let's go ahead and test it on some hardware. So here I'm going to access my build directory within my workspace for my project, so build test Ultra 96, and then here is my let's see here is my resulting image. And so now what I want to do is SCP it to our build server where I can run it on actual hardware. go. Now that we've transferred the files over, I can go to my build server and I can actually run a script which will boot up my Ultra 96. And once I get to the U-boot prompt, I can then extract the image from the TFTP server and boot it onto the Ultra 96. Here I've booted into the Linux prompt where I can execute cursory commands and any utilities that come already pre-included with this image. I can also do a processor dump, which will show us what's running on Core 0 within the context of SEL4. So here we have our serial server running, as well as on Core 1 we have our actual virtual machine running. So now that we've gone through the process of creating a very basic project, let's go ahead and make some modifications to this. So next I'll go to Virtual Composer again and I'll add an additional virtual machine. So again, click on the settings, and this time I'll assign it to Core 2. I'm going to leave the default memory address as well as the amount of RAM. And then here I just want to make a simple connection just to show how easy it is to add an additional virtual machine on top of SEL4 with VM Composer. So now that I've got my connections, I can verify that the direction is how I want it, and then from here I'll go ahead and build the project again. Alright, this time it built in approximately 70 seconds, or almost 60 seconds like the last time. So we'll close out of this. Again, we can review any configuration steps and build steps for this new configuration. So now let's test it on some hardware. So we'll close out of our previous session, and I'll go ahead and transfer the new image over again. Okay. We'll boot up our Ultra 96. Alright, and once we reach U-boot, we can go ahead and SCP or TFTP our new file over. So what we're seeing here is we have our two virtual machines going through its boot trace and boot process. And since they're both connected to the individual serial server, we're actually seeing two virtual machines boot at once. So now that I've reached the login prompt, I can go ahead and do a core dump and confirm that I have my new virtual machine running on Core 2, the previous virtual machine still running on Core 1, and my serial server running on Core 0. So I can get back to the first virtual machine by utilizing the @1 command, which is an SEL4 construct, as well as utilizing the @0 command to get to my first virtual machine. So here I can actually switch between virtual machines and execute, again, cursor utilities or any commands that were included within this default image. So there you have it. What I just demonstrated for you is how easy it is to rapidly develop virtual machines in a development environment, including real peripherals and I/O using VM Composer. Thank you.